All right. Maybe we'll start with a little intro music here in the beginning. This is the pre-show behind the scenes portion of the Creative Control Room podcast. Welcome. This is a part of the show where we go through and make sure that all systems are go. So let's make sure that all systems are go. Okay. So what we're going to do right now is go through, make sure that all of our cameras are set up, all of our lighting is good to go, audio levels look good, and that we are live streaming everywhere we need to. So audio looks good at the moment. Camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, looking good there. Oh, what else we got? Let's see. We are streaming on YouTube. We are streaming on Facebook. Checking the Twitters. Twitch should be chiming in any moment now. And today is Sunday, September 19th. Yes? Cool. Got our lights on. Lighting looks good. We are recording. Ooh, my Rodecaster. What is that? That's interesting. Oh, duh, because it's playing back. Never mind. Ignore me. Anyway, okay. Yeah, so I think we're ready to go. Got a lot to talk about today, so we definitely need to get into this one ASAP. One sec here. Whoop. Close that. Okay. All right. Let's pot this down because it's time to get going here. What were we, episode 93? Yeah. Hello and welcome to episode number 93 of the Creative Control Room podcast, a show for creators, makers, and doers, where my goal is to help you make to the max. I'm your operator, Ryan Hafey, and in this episode, I'm going to go through basically 9 different podcast gear setup scenarios, depending on your use case, so that you can have the perfect podcast studio. Let's roll that official, unofficial intro. Here we go. God, I gotta fix that. Hello. Welcome to the Creative Control Room podcast, episode number 93 for Sunday, September 19th, 2021. Well, got a lot to talk about today. So yeah, this is going to be, we haven't done one of these episodes in a while. I've done similar episodes to this, but this will be an episode dedicated to podcasting and podcast setup. Depending on how you plan to, host your podcast, you're going to need some gear. Whether it's audio, and we're going to be looking at 3 different categories. We'll be looking at audio only. You just want to do a straight up audio podcast. If you want to do audio and incorporate some video, I'll tell you what kind of gear you should focus on then. And also audio plus video plus streaming, which is what we do here. And within each of those 3 categories, I'm going to go through a good gear list, better, and best. So if you want to just kind of get by, and if you need to save a few bucks, you can kind of refer to the good list. And then as we go on, that will increase in price and also, quality. So we will get to that, but there are a few things to talk about. Before we get to that, let's start with some updates from the week. And updates, I've been spending a lot of this week editing some short features. Got a big fight coming up in October, and I'm trying to get ahead, get some of these features edited and done so that I can just schedule them out down the road and free my time up for some other things. So really worked a lot on that, not a lot on personal projects. That's more on the boxing side of things. But one thing I have been doing more of, and I talked a little bit about it last week, is been streaming on Twitch a little bit more. And this podcast does stream on Twitch, but I've also been doing some gaming stuff, which is not typically like me to do, but I play a lot of Liftoff Simulator, FPV, and I've started to do this thing where the goal is I stream on Twitch until I get first place in a race that I pick. So I pick a track, and then I just keep racing until I get first place in it. And my goal is to beat my previous time. So my previous time was 39 minutes on September 15th. And just going to kind of keep going with that, and because it's fun. And I figure as long as I'm playing it, and as long as I have the capabilities to live stream, well, I might as well live stream on Twitch. So if you're into FPV, if you're into just gaming in general, and if you want to see how long it takes me to get first place in a race, chime into my Twitch. And I do it maybe 2 to 3 times a week. I haven't come up with a set schedule yet right now. I'm still learning the whole Twitch thing. And by the way, Twitch, my Twitch profile account, whatever you call it, is twitch.tv or .com/TCCRP. TCCRP. So come out and fly with me. Outside of that, also downloaded Blender. Actually, this morning. Blender is like a 3D rendering software, a free open source software, I guess, that a lot of people use. I've always been kind of intrigued by that sort of world, like the animation and 3D rendering, but never allowed myself to jump into it. But, me with my short attention span, figured I'd download it, and I guess Blender has a big series of kind of getting started tutorials that, whenever I have time, I'm going to go through those and see if I can kind of figure it out. And I don't know what I use it for yet, but I'm always intrigued to try new things and kind of dive into new worlds. So we're going to do that. And then lastly, and this is more or less a request for help. I've been looking for a teleprompter actually for quite a while, but I've been kind of like amping up my search for one recently. I want a teleprompter that will accommodate wide-angle lenses, and I can't find one. I do have I think I have it with me, but I have the Parrot teleprompter, which is it's about this big, and you just kind of snap it on the front of your camera lens, and it's super handy. You can put an iPhone in it, underneath it, and just put it right on your lens, and it works great. Problem is, it really only works for like focal lengths of 35 millimeters or greater, I guess. And this particular lens is a 12 millimeter lens, but it's on a crop sensor, which means it's about 18 or 19 millimeter equivalent. So what I'm really looking for is a teleprompter that will, something affordable. I'm not looking for some like news station teleprompter or anything like that, but something that's affordable that I can put here. And the reason for it is not so much that I could do scripted videos, but like, for example, my notes right now are on this computer screen. I have to look over here if I want to see what my notes are. And it would be much better if I could set up a teleprompter and be able to look through the teleprompter. And this is actually something I saw from Levi Allen. He made a video a little while ago because he set up a podcast studio, and he was doing that. He had a camera with a teleprompter on it, and he was able to read his notes while it appears he's looking into the camera. And I would like to be able to do that versus having to go over here and be more disconnected with the audience. So if anyone out there knows of any good teleprompters that work for wide-angle lenses, please leave me a comment. Let me know, because I need to pick one up. Okay, that's enough of updates. So let's move on now to some news from the week. And really, the only news of note, in my opinion, was Apple has come out with their new iPhone 13 lineup. I mean, they released more than that, but in this particular segment, we're going to be focusing on the iPhone 13 Pro camera specs. Okay, so little context. I have the iPhone XS. It's fully paid off. I've had it for a few years, and it's time. I used to be one of the ones that would just upgrade every time a new iPhone came out, and that costs a lot of money. And honestly, these new iPhones are lasting for a long time now, and I'm kind of at the point where I don't need to upgrade right away. And there's really, even with this iPhone 13, there's not a whole lot new in it compared to, say, the previous version, the iPhone 12. But it was time for me, I think, to upgrade. Plus, my oldest daughter has an iPhone 8, like a hand-me-down iPhone 8 that's all kinds of beat up, and I guess one of her friends stepped on it, so now every time she hits the home button on it, it like bzz, it like makes this sort of vibration noise. It's kind of weird. So it's probably time to hand one down anyway. But what I wanted to do was focus on the specs of the iPhone 13 Pro camera. So we're not going to be looking, I mean, we could spend an hour going through all the specs of all the different versions, but I pre-ordered the 13 Pro, not the Pro Max, not the big one. My understanding though is that the Pro and the Pro Max have the same camera. So we're going to go through some of the camera specs of the 13 Pro / Pro Max. And so let's do that now. Let's go over to the screen here. So here we go. We've got the 13 Pro and the Pro Max set up. This is just the Apple website. And going down to the camera here. So we're starting off with a 12 megapixel camera system. 12 megapixel, I believe, is what they've had in there for a few generations. 12 isn't bad. I mean, if you're shooting on a camera, you're not using this for professional purposes. So 12 megapixels is going to get you far enough for what you need. I know other cameras have more, but like the more megapixels, the bigger the files, you're going to be using up more of your camera storage. 12 megapixels is fine. Got 3 lenses on the back of the Pro and the Pro Max with f2.8 aperture for the telephoto, f1.5 for the wide, and f1.8 for the ultra wide, which is nice. 3 times optical zoom, 2 times optical zoom out. Let's see, digital zoom, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of different features here, most of which I will probably never use. You've got digital or night mode, portraits, dual optical image stabilization, sensor shift, optical image stabilization. Really, it's interesting because there's a lot, and I'm sure a lot of these are digitally enhanced, but a lot of these different features here would be amazing in just kind of some of the prosumer, DSLR or mirrorless cameras we have these days. But anyway, night mode, I am interested in trying that because the XS does not do too well in the dark. HDR, photograph styles. This was an interesting one that I saw. So Apple ProRes or ProRAW. So within, and actually I thought that was for video only, maybe not. But what I've heard is that the iPhone, as long as you have an iPhone 13 Pro or Pro Max, and as long as you select the 256 gigabyte or greater storage option, you have the ability with the iPhone to record ProRes, Apple ProRes, which is a higher quality video codec, I guess. So if you wanted to record and then take that off and edit with it or color grade with it, you're going to have more data to work with and more flexibility. So that's kind of a cool thing. You're going to have the ability to shoot, moving down to the video stuff, be able to shoot 4K video at 24, 25, 30, or 60 frames per second. Not bad. I am interested to see kind of the upgrade in quality there from the XS. 1080p video at 25, 30, or 60. Where's really 1080 up to 60p only, and 720 at 30 frames per second. So where's all? There we go. There's the ProRes video recording at 4K 30p or 30 FPS. As long as you have the higher up version, and then 1080 at 30 FPS for the 128 gig storage. Okay, I get it now. But, here we go. Slow-mo video at 1080 up to 240 frames per second. That's also something that I'm interested in looking into because, I don't know, we'll see how it does. The video quality on the XS, at least, is not that great for the slow motion, and that's to be expected. I can take 8 megapixel photos while recording in 4K, stereo recording. What is this True Depth camera? I'm not even sure exactly what that is. So this is obviously not an in-depth review of the camera specs on the iPhone 13 or 13 Pro. And again, as far as I understand, there's not a whole lot, just some incremental improvements over the previous model. So Probably nothing too crazy, as far as expectations go, but we'll see how it goes. Either way, should be getting the camera or the new phone by the end of the month. So there is that. And then let's just, by the way, and this is another reason why I need my notes right here as opposed to over here, because I skipped this part of the show, which is, hey, if you're new to the show, my name is Ryan Hafey. I am the operator of the Creative Control Room podcast here, and this is where this is my creative control room. This is where I work on all my various projects having to do with video, photography, podcasting, live streaming, FPV occasionally, all that kind of stuff. And I like to document the different things that I happen to be working on here as well and dispel all the knowledge I have in those areas. So if you're in that world at all, or if you think any of that would be of value to you, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button wherever you happen to be watching or listening, and follow me on social media at Ryan Hafey on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And feel free to swing by, ask me a question, or just say what's up after the show. Okay. Perfect. So now let's move on to the main topic of today's show, which happens to be podcasting gear, podcasting setups. What is the perfect podcast setup for you? So as I mentioned at the top of the show, what we're going to do is we're going to look at 3 different podcast categories. So if someone comes up to me and says, hey, I want to set up a podcast studio, one of my first questions is going to be, well, what are you using it for? What's your use case? Are you looking to, you just want to get some audio up and running? You just want to start an audio podcast, kind of, go back to the old days of podcasting where it was just basically strictly audio. Do you want to do audio and then incorporate a video element, maybe do a YouTube, video podcast as well as audio? Or do you want to do what we're doing here, which is video, audio, and live streaming all in one? So depending on what you do, obviously the type and amount of gear that you will need, as well as your budget, will vary. But within each of those categories, what I'm going to do is break down, and we're not going to go into too many specifics. I'm not going to tell you buy this camera or buy that microphone, and I'm not going to tell you, about all the different accessories you need. We could be here for hours just talking about all the little intricacies that you need when it comes to gear. But in this particular instance, I'm just going to be doing more of a high-level overview of the different types of gear that you should be looking at for each of these scenarios. And then, it'll be on you after that to go through and kind of do a little bit of research and figure out some of the other things that you need. Again, because otherwise this would be a 3-hour podcast. But I'm hoping that this overview will, if you already have some ideas in mind, if you're thinking about starting a podcast and you're just not exactly sure where to start, this will at least be a good starting point for you. Also, at the end of this, I will give, I've got some software recommendations for free. So if you're on a budget, we can go over those as well. So let's start with audio only. Let's say you want to start a podcast and you just want to do audio, nothing crazy. Now, my personal thoughts on that aside, which I guess I should share those. My personal thoughts on this would be, don't do only audio, because there is so much competition there, and it's so much harder to be discovered when you only have an audio focused podcast. Not impossible, I guess, but I really don't hear of anyone these days who is starting a new podcast that happens to be only audio. Maybe like some news stations that are already kind of, they already have an audience. But if you're starting from scratch and nobody knows who you are and you want to get the word out there, audio only may not be the best idea. But I digress. This is what you want. You want audio only, whatever. So let's go over the different scenarios within this category. So audio only, let's start with the good. Honestly, what I would recommend for a good audio only podcast setup would be just use your smartphone. Or if you don't have a smartphone that's capable of recording decent audio, you can just go out there and buy some kind of audio recorder. Zoom makes decent ones. Tascam has some decent ones. But what I would do is get a smartphone. If you've got your smartphone, which most people do, you could use the audio within the smartphone, but I would maybe spend a few bucks and pick up like a clip-on lavalier microphone of some kind, or there's all sorts of different microphones that you can plug in to your iPhone, and you can just kind of record directly into that, and the quality isn't too bad. So that would be my option for good. Let's move up to better. In this case, I would look at getting some kind of USB microphone. Rode, RODE, makes some good USB microphones. The Blue Yeti is a very popular USB microphone. And obviously, if you're going to go this route, you would want to use that in conjunction with your PC or your laptop. Ignore my dogs in the background. So that's better. And then if you want the utmost quality for your audio-only podcast, I would definitely move up to an XLR microphone, something like this. This is the Shure SM7B. Depending on when you buy it, I think it's either a $400 or $500 microphone. In this case, it's an XLR microphone, which is referenced to the type of cable. You're going to plug that into either an audio interface, something like this Rodecaster Pro, although this is going to be a lot of overkill for most people, especially if you're doing a solo show. This has up to 4 inputs on it. You could get a smaller, my previous audio interface is a little Behringer 2-channel audio interface that was maybe about $100. You could go with something like that, or you could just record directly into, you could get yourself like a Zoom recorder, the aforementioned Zoom recorder. And Megan Verdadero, thank you for the comment. Thanks for the information. Very helpful. Appreciate this. So yeah, you could plug in to an audio interface or just get like a Zoom recorder that allows for XLR inputs. And that would be, you'd be good to go then. So yeah, XLR is going to give you the best quality. There's a lot of different microphone options to choose from. Prior to using this one, I used a Audio-Technica AT2035, I think, which is maybe $200 or less. The AT2020 by Audio-Technica is good. You typically get what you pay for when it comes to microphones, so stick to, don't go super cheap on them. If quality is your goal, but that would be my recommendation. So audio only, check. Let's move on to video and audio. Now you want to have an audio podcast, but you also want to incorporate some video into it. We're not doing any live streaming yet, but my podcast setup for video and audio in the good category would be, again, I'm going to go back to the smartphone. Smartphones these days, especially anything, released within the last 2-3 years, are going to give you some good, or decent at least, video quality. I would also add into this that you should pick up an inexpensive ring light or maybe some kind of beauty dish. They're all over on Amazon. They're not very expensive. You see people on social media, TikTok especially, Instagram Reels, whatever. People use ring lights all the time. And there's kind of that iconic look where if someone's using a ring light, you can see the shape of it in their eyes. That's just kind of what happens. But ring lights, generally speaking, are a good, inexpensive lighting solution for most people. So get your smartphone, get a ring light or a beauty dish. A beauty dish is just basically kind of like a miniature softbox light, I guess. It's got a little bit of diffusion, might look a little bit better than some more harsh lighting sources. And then get yourself I would do maybe a lav mic, something that you can attach and plug into your smartphone and then clip on your shirt. Or again, depending on how far away the smartphone is going to be from you, get a clip-in microphone that clips directly into your iPhone and then record into that. But a lav mic might work best just, if you want to set the phone away from you and be able to film and, for framing and all that kind of stuff. But that's what I would do for that. Moving up to the better category. Now we're going to pick ourselves up an entry-level compact camera, mirrorless camera, DSLR, something in the entry level. Like this camera right here is the Sony ZV-1. Now this runs, it's like $750 to $800, I think. But I actually take this when I go to like fighter camp visits. The quality is actually pretty decent. But there are other cameras that are cheaper than this. Did I write any down? No, I didn't make any specific recommendations, but like the Canon G7X is decent. There's a lot of different options to choose from when it comes to compact cameras. But in fact, a podcast that I produce every week. I built a studio for this person, and I used 4 of these cameras. These are the primary cameras for his studio, and they work great. So you can get a lot done with the ZV-1. So I would do that. Something with a built-in lens, something that you don't have to worry about too many parts. You don't need to get something with interchangeable lenses unless you want to, I guess. We're going to get a video light in this case. Now we're going to move up from the ring light, and we're going to look at some kind of like a light panel or, I don't think you can see it. Let's do it. Might as well. Here, we're just going to. So like that light back there, that's just kind of a flat panel light that used to be my primary light source for this podcast. There we go. But it just doesn't have a ton of diffusion on it, which is why I moved to this current light that's kind of out of frame, but it's just a big old softbox. Anyway, a flat panel light, something like that will be fine in most cases. You could even probably in this category get away with a ring light if you wanted to. And then we're going to go with the USB mic plugged into a laptop or computer. So entry-level compact camera, video light, flat panel, something with diffusion, and a USB microphone plugged into a laptop. Megan says, I see some people use foil when lighting. How does that work? Using foil depends on, I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to, unless you're referring to like people using foil for like to reflect light. Some people will use I'm forgetting what they're, just like bounce cards and things like that. They will be strategically placed to help bounce existing light off and illuminate other areas. In this case, probably not super necessary, but I believe that's what you're referring to there, Megan. And then finally, as far as video and audio goes, the category, the podcast setup when it comes to the best quality here is we're gonna move up now to a more prosumer mirrorless or DSLR option. The Sony a6500 here works great. The Sony a7 III, I'm a big Sony advocate. A lot of the newer Canon cameras are great. Really just something that's a little bit more on the high end as far as quality goes to really up our video quality game. We're going to go with an XLR microphone, again, like the Shure SM7B or something else that's decent quality that uses an XLR cable that we would plug into an audio interface, which we would connect to our computer, or we could use an external recorder here as well. What else? We want to get, instead of a flat panel light, we're going to bump it up to a video light, kind of like this one that I have here. Now a good budget video light option is the Godox SL60W. And that paired with this particular softbox, which is a 36-inch softbox, it's about $200 for all of it combined. Not too expensive. Definitely get yourself an audio interface that can give you some options to tweak things as you're recording them. Again, this Rodecaster is a little bit of overkill for most people. It's about $600. You don't need something this complex unless you plan on having multiple guests and you want to use all the soundboard stuff and all that kind of stuff. But look into some kind of audio interface, whether it's a little Behringer one or something like this. Did I miss anything there? Oh yeah, you would also want to look at some additional lighting sources just for set dressing, because now that we're including video, you obviously want a good key light source, something like this, but then you have little accent lights. In my case, I have these red lights and this teal light behind me, and those just add a little bit of pop to your podcast and to the overall look of things. I've also got this light over here, which acts as kind of like a hair light. So consider that. They have like those tube lights. The RGB tube lights are great because you can kind of just position those wherever you want to and put a splash of light everywhere. But look into that. So there you go. And now we're going to move into the final category here, which is video, audio, and live streaming. And this is where stuff kind of gets real. But the interesting thing is here, when it comes to a good podcast setup for this category, video, audio, and live streaming, is really going to be the same as the good podcast setup for just video and audio. Why is that? Well, because most smartphones have the ability to live stream. If I wanted to, I could pick up my phone now and stream directly to my YouTube channel or to Twitch or wherever I want to stream to. So again, we're going to have our smartphone, we're going to have our ring light set up, we're going to have our attachable lavalier mic, something like that. But you can really run an entire studio directly out of your iPhone. And what I would also say here is if you're worried about quality, especially when you're live streaming, focus more. I would look at upgrading your lighting situation before you look at getting a new camera, especially if you're on a budget. You would be amazed at the difference in quality you can achieve when you simply add a nice, decent quality light source to your setup. Lighting is everything, even if you're shooting on an iPhone. So if you're on a budget and all you have is a smartphone at the moment, that's fine. Use that as your studio. Just focus more on ways to make yourself and your setting look a little bit better. So that's good. Moving up to better. This is going to be basically almost the same as the previous category. We're going to do an entry level or compact mirrorless DSLR. What you want to look for here is something that's simple that you can kind of turn on, just go. Again, the Sony ZV-1, this camera here is great. It's kind of all fixed lens with a little bit of zoom range. And but what you really want to look for is a camera that offers a clean HDMI output. And that's going to allow you to output the feed from your camera without any overlays and get it into your computer, which can then be transcoded or whatever, and then sent off into YouTube so you can live stream. So clean HDMI out. That's the really important part. We're also going to do a video light. Again, we're going to stick with flat panel, something like that, even a ring light if you'd like to. And we're going to go with a USB-C microphone plugged into a laptop. You're also going to need, the additional thing you'll need in this, now that we're doing live stuff, is you're going to need a capture card. Now, there we go. Good. Thank God it was right on top. So this is the Camlink 4K. If you have just a single camera operation, just one camera, something like this would be good. I want to say this is like $150, something like that. But you would plug your camera into this via HDMI, and then you would plug the other end of this into your computer. That's going to allow the feed from your camera to get into your computer. You also have the option, well, you know what, we'll save that for the next category. But yes, single camera operations, get one of these. And then moving on to the best category for video, audio, and live streaming. Again, it's going to be very similar to the best podcast setup for the previous category of audio and just video. So we're going to go with a prosumer, mirrorless, or DSLR camera, something with a clean HDMI output so that you can get that feed out. We're going to, for as far as audio goes, we're going to go with an XLR microphone that we're plugging in. Well, in this case, we're going to need an audio interface which connects to a computer or laptop. We're not going to do an external audio recorder in this case. And then we're going to get a nice video light for lighting. We're going to get something like this with some nice diffusion placed kind of up and 35, 45 degrees or so. Some other lighting for some set dressing, that kind of stuff. What else? And then in this case, we're going to go with an ATEM mini switcher board, which I don't know. Okay, so that's this here. Kind of hard to see, but this is a live switcher. This is how I do all this stuff when I am live streaming. So I have 3 cameras in my studio. All 3 of them connect to this so that when I'm live streaming, I can just go back and forth between all of them seamlessly with a push of a button. You could do things like fade to black. You can do picture-in-picture, which I typically just use on a different device. But that's what one of my dogs will leave me alone. But definitely get one of these. And especially if you really want to go all out and you want to have a multi-camera setup in your podcast studio, you want to get something like this because those capture cards, the one from that I showed you, the Cam Link, I need to probably go back to this angle. It will work for, you would need one of them for each camera that you are using. But this ATEM Mini Pro, I think, is like $300 or $400, and that's a little over $100. So after you get past 2 cameras, it just makes more sense for you to pick up this switcher, because you can seamlessly switch, and it acts as a capture card. And if I wanted to, I could even plug in my MacBook Pro via HDMI to this ATEM Mini and use that as an additional input as well. So I would definitely consider that for your capture card. And obviously within this category, by the way, video, audio, and live streaming, you want to make sure that you have a high quality internet speed or just a fast internet connection, something preferably that you can hardwire. You also are going to need a computer that is equipped to handle some of the load. So to kind of give you an idea, this podcast setup, everything that I have goes into my computer, and then I record and stream from my PC, which a lot of that bandwidth is sent through my graphics card. I have an RTX 3070 Ti graphics card. I did before that have a GTX 1080 graphics card, which got me by. But if you experience a lot of lag, that would be why, because you don't have a system that maybe can handle all the streaming and recording. There are ways to record directly off of camera, but in my case, I'm not recording 3 different camera angles at once. I'm recording everything in real time. So all of these edits are going to be recorded directly into the final podcast, which for my use case is fine. If you want to record everything individually so you can kind of mess around with things later, you could do something like get like an Atomos Ninja 5 external monitor, which has an HDMI input and an HDMI output, so that you can record into that, but also send that signal back out and into your computer. So you could technically be streaming and editing live, but then still also have backups of all 3 cameras that you want to record. Those Ninja monitors or reference monitors are not very cheap, so you're definitely going up in price there. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to go all out with it, get a few different cameras, get the switcher, get some good lighting, few different other lighting options for set dressing, and there you go. And that's that. So those are the 3. So we just went through 9 different scenarios. So hopefully, depending on what you want to do, you now have some information for how to get started with your own podcast. And as I mentioned, I did want to go over a couple free software that you can consider. I'll name the free software, and then I'll kind of give you an idea of some of the different software that I use for my setup. But obviously, you're going to be needing OBS or OBS Streamlabs. OBS stands for Open Broadcaster Software. OBS is what's allowing me to stream this podcast currently and record it. Wait a second here. There we go. So everything kind of gets routed through OBS. It is free. It's open source. Just go to obsproject.com and you can download it there. And I also have videos on my main podcast channel, as well as some videos I have some videos on my main YouTube channel, as well as some previous episodes that touch on OBS. So if you're interested in learning, because there's a lot to learn, there's kind of a learning curve with OBS, check some of those out. Audacity, Audacity, that is a free audio editor. I actually used that quite a bit before I got into the Adobe ecosystem, but Audacity is free. It's pretty full featured for free audio editing software, open source, I believe. Go check that one out. And then as far as video editing, if you do plan to do any post-production, post-editing and things like that, DaVinci Resolve offers a free option that's pretty full featured. So that's going to give you just video editing options, color grading, all that kind of stuff. Like I just mentioned, I am in the Adobe ecosystem. So for any video editing I do, I use Premiere Pro. Audio editing, I typically use Adobe Audition. I do use OBS. I don't use any paid broadcast software, because why? When OBS does great for you. Streamlabs OBS, by the way, is essentially the same as OBS, but it offers additional functionality for like skins and things like that. There are some paid integrations with it. But yeah, OBS works great. And then, yeah, and then as far as just additional accessories, again, I said I wasn't going to get into too many specifics about this, but of course, when you set up a podcast studio, anytime you buy new gear, you're not just going to buy a camera and then that's it. You're going to have to get things like just cables, different HDMI cables or power cables, SD cards, batteries, tripods, field monitors. I use these two different monitors here. This one is a camera reference monitor. This one just acts kind of like a third monitor, which I have OBS in right now, so I can keep an eye on drop frames and make sure my audio levels are coming through, that type of thing. This little device here, if I can pull it out, let's see, there we go. This is a Stream Deck. I've talked about this a number of times, but this thing is great because it integrates well with OBS. You can, when you set up your scenes and your sources within OBS, you can use this to turn them on and off. That's how I'm able to quickly kind of go to my computer screen and the picture-in-picture there. That's how I'm able to quickly turn on my little animations and things like that. So cool little device. I would look into that if you for some added convenience. But outside of that, that's about it. Hopefully that was helpful to some of you out there. And if it was, it would be great if you could hit that subscribe button wherever you happen to be watching or listening. And also be sure to follow me on social media at Ryan Hafey on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Feel free to swing by, say hi, or ask me a question after the show is done. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and call this one done. So thank you so much for watching and listening. And we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.